Back to My Garden, Episode 13.
Welcome to Back to My Garden. Discover your passion for gardening. Here's Dave Ledoux.
Hello, garden lover. It's Dave. Do you want to save time, save money, and have your most amazing garden ever? Receive free tips, strategies, and gardening techniques from passionate gardeners from around the world. Join the VIP club for free today at BackToMyGarden.com/VIP. This episode of Back to My Garden brought to you by Coffee Royalty. Is it really possible to lose 5, 10, even 20 pounds or more just by changing your coffee or tea? Find out more at www.coffeeroyalty.com. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world when you listen to this. I'm Dave Ledoux, and welcome to another edition of Back to My Garden. Today we have a very unique and special guest. He is a teacher. He has a passion for demonstration, medicinal herbs, and gardening. He runs Artemisia's Forest Garden Nursery as well as the Living Centre near London, Ontario, Canada. I want to welcome to the call Shantree Kacera. Shantree, welcome to Back to My Garden.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
I was telling my wife that I'm going to interview you today, and she was very interested because we're familiar with your nursery from the exotics, goji berry. I actually found you through a hardy kiwi plant at a trade show. And you have things I'm not even familiar with, like medlar and pawpaw and shipova. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute, but I'd like you to just take a minute and share with our listeners a little bit about yourself and your background.
Okay. Well, my background is my great-grandmother was a herbalist in former Yugoslavia, so I came over when I was 4 and a half to Canada. But my great-grandmother was a herbalist, so back when I was, I think I was in grade 9 or grade 10, I came home from school and I told my parents, I'm going to become a herbalist. And that's actually when my mom told me the story about my great-grandmother and that she was a healer and worked with herbs. And my parents, when they came to Canada, like in Yugoslavia back in those days, everything was organic. They actually didn't have any chemicals in that country. So when my parents came to Canada, they didn't speak English very well, so they had to, they worked at different odd jobs, so financially we didn't have a lot of money. So my parents grew a lot of food partly because of necessity. It was partly a survival thing and making ends meet. So everything that we grew, from herbs to vegetables to fruits to everything, it was all done organically, so that's what I grew up with. And then when I was 16, 17, I started chanting because we grew up in London, and I started chanting to my parents, let's move to the country. Let's move to the country, and that's when I started saving my money to move out to the country. And 1983 is when I moved out of London and moved out to where I'm now on a 50-acre piece of property. And the standard that I had for finding a piece of land is that it had to be organic, and it took me almost close to 3 years before I finally found this piece of land. And the people who lived here were from Holland, and they took care of the land very beautifully and took care of it. And I've actually met all 3 former families who lived on this property from 1912. The kids who grew up here were from 1912, 1914. And so I got to get a bit of the history of the land and how it was taken care of. And so I feel very fortunate to have been on this land now for 32 years. And my passion has been gardening, even though I've been a practitioner as a nutritionist, as a herbalist. But my passion has always been being outdoors, tending to the plants and growing things organically, and growing a herb garden, and harvesting herbs for making medicine. So when people ask me, who has been your greatest teacher, both as a nutritionist or a herbalist, I always say it's been my garden, because when you're working with the plants, you really get to know them very, very intimately and work with them that way. So over these 3 decades, there's been hundreds of people who have trained to be herbalists, and I've treated well over 10,000 patients that have come through my office. with numerous illnesses and things like that. So where I really, my unique niche in this field is where herbalism and nutrition meet the medicinal plants and the edible plants. And my passion has also been working on preventing illnesses from occurring. So by being in the garden, by harvesting and eating fresh food, fresh plants for teas, we can stay healthy, so we don't have to go to the stronger medicinals or to go to even stronger measures of pharmaceuticals or surgery and chemo and all those kind of things. So anyways, that's sort of been my journey in the last 30 years as a gardener and a person who's made it as part of my career, part of my way of living and creating a lifestyle.
For those of you driving in your car, keep both hands on the wheel, or if you're jogging, I'll put a link on the blog to Shantree's incredible resource website. It's www.thelivingcenter.com. That's TheLivingCentre. Note the Canadian spelling, the British spelling, thelivingcenter.com. Absolutely brilliant website. Shantree, I want to back up a little bit. When I went to high school, there was only 2 obese kids in my whole school. 1 kid had asthma. There was no such thing as peanut allergies when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. Now it's an epidemic. You're in the healing modality, the intersection of where garden meets health. Can you talk a little bit about where we find ourselves today in the 21st century?
That's a really good question. There was so much more illnesses out there than there were. Like when I first became a nutritionist, what was that, 30 some odd years ago, the cancer rate was 1 in 8. And now it's roughly hovering around 1 to 2, 1 to 2.5, something like that. So that's an increase, from 1 to 8 to 1 to 2 in 30 years. And yet when you think of how much we know about the human body now, I think it's 30 some odd years ago, how much we know about the lifestyle, the plants, the nutrition that can create healing. We know so much more. So in other words, we know both the solution or the remedy, and we also know so much more about how the human body works. And yet, the diseases keep increasing. So to your question, I'm going to say our lifestyle has totally gone, I'm not sure what the best word to use here is out of whack. We've just gone totally crazy in the sense of the speed of our lifestyle, the stress that people create for themselves, the choices that people make, even though I think a lot of people know what's healthy and what's not healthy, how to live sanely, creating this fast-paced rat race that we've created. When you put all those things together, we've created a very toxic world, be it in the air, the water, the soil, the way even a lot of plants are grown these days with genetically modified organisms, the GMOs. We just created an artificial world, and somehow we think we're going to be able to be healthy when our body needs a natural world. And yet if we create an unnatural world, how can our bodies thrive in that? And so with your question there, it's an excellent question, and I believe it's people just setting priorities. They're setting priorities which are not the wisest choices.
Mm. We have a lot of listeners.
That's when we hear talking about, or any illness, to me it doesn't really matter what illness it is, because illness only comes about because we're not taking care of our own needs. In other words, listening to our own bodies of what we need to eat, or how we need to breathe, or how we need to exercise or move, or how to be in nature. So I think intuitively we know, but our culture has just created this other world that people have got caught up on, and that's all of us. we all live in this modern world, and that's the world that we've somehow created, and it's become faster in the last 30 years. And the diseases are just showing that we're off track.
Yeah, I mean, asthma, allergies, kids are eating their meals through the drive-thrus of the windows of their cars. There's no phys ed anymore in school. Mm-hmm. Talk to our listeners who are brand new beginning gardeners who, they want to grow their own vegetables a little bit to supplement their diets and get into the vegetable side of gardening. Talk a little bit about where they get started if they want to start growing herbs in their patio gardens or backyard gardens. How does somebody get into what you've been doing for 30 years so passionately?
So your question is, how can someone step into it, or how to...
Yeah, where do they begin? What's a good starting point for the new person?
To me, it's outside your back, right outside your back door. Actually, sorry, I'll take that back. we grow, my wife and I, we live in an old house. It's a 100-year-old house, and we grow easily 80, probably more than that, maybe even close to 90% of all of our fresh greens in our kitchen. In other words, we got trays, we got sprouts, we have baby greens. We got this stuff that we're growing here. Well, maybe not in the summer right now, July and August we're not, but during the winter months, like let's say from September all the way to, I just stopped doing it about a month ago, so let's say till May, we pretty much all of our greens right side in our kitchen. So basically that's a real simple thing to do. And it doesn't take up a lot of space. It's just 2 shelves, maybe 5, 6 high, facing the south side of the window. So that's an easy thing that anyone can do. And it costs pennies. I mean, we probably... Yeah, we can grow a whole tray for 25 cents, like a pound of greens for 25, maybe 35 cents a pound, compared to when you go to a supermarket or a grocery store and you buy the baby organic greens and you're paying $5 a pound. Ours are a fraction of that cost. So anyway, that's the first place. The second one is right outside your back door, and we have a beautiful back door that's facing south. And as soon as you walk outside, there's a little spiral herb garden, and my wife actually tends to that garden. And there's probably at least 30, probably 40 different herbs that we grow there. And some of them are edible herbs, and other ones are spices like basil and thyme and tarragon, all those kind of things. And so basically, our spice rack is right outside the back door. And yes, we have a dry one as well in the kitchen. But in the sense of getting fresh greens or herbs for teas or spices, it's like you can be pouring rain and just still step outside, grab a handful, and come in and use it for salad or salad dressing or a cup of tea. Right out beyond that garden, we have a small, it's a bigger one. It's called the Rainbow Garden or a tea garden, and that's where we grow a lot of our fresh teas. So same thing. It doesn't need a lot of space. For example, the spiral I was talking about is probably less than 10 by 10. And like I said, there's 30 to 40 different herbs there. And that supplies us pretty much for 9 to 10 months of the year that we can actually grow things outside. So pretty much we can start harvesting things there at the end of March, early April, just because it's facing south and it's nicely protected. And we can go there till close to Christmas, middle of December. So it's really only January, February, and part of March, perhaps, 2.5 months, where we might not be able to get anything from that garden. The beautiful thing with herbs is a lot of them are perennials, and perennial plants are hardier. They come up when the weather's just right. You don't have to plant the seed. You don't have to buy seeds every year. So basically, I've just gone through 3 stages. One, the kitchen, one's the herb spiral garden, and then the other garden, which is a tea garden. And those 3 gardens are pretty much visited daily, especially the 2 outside ones, maybe 9 to 10 months of the year.
A lot of gardeners love sharing or love sharing mistakes, things that didn't go well in the garden, and you have so much experience. Has anything ever given you a problem, or have you ever had a catastrophic failure in your garden that you can share humorously?
Well, I guess one of my greatest teachers, I guess this is going to be humorous, is it might not be a plant that a lot of people recognize, but it's a common plant that grows outside in nature, in the wild, and it's called horsetail, Quisticum, the Latin name. And horsetail, back in the dinosaur days, used to be bigger than trees. I mean, it used to be one of the largest trees on the planet, called horsetail. Now it's this small 2 to 3 foot plant. And it's an amazing plant. It's a lot of times you find it in shampoos, it's in conditioners. It's used for anything hard in our body, like our teeth, our nails, our hair. It's good for the nervous system. I mean, I can go on and on. I mean, there's just so many wonderful things about horsetail. So in my earlier days, maybe I was here for 10, maybe less than 10 years, I started offering herb walks for people who come out here and visit the garden and learn about the plants, see them, taste them, smell them, etc. And there's this one plant, horsetail, that was way out in the field, out by our pond, and when I moved here, the property was sort of on the wilder side, so it was hard for me to actually take people out to the pond to visit the plant. So I took the plant and transplanted it, and I brought it into the herb garden, and it died on me. So I went out there the following year and got some more and transplanted, brought it in, and it grew. And within less than 10 years, that little plant called horsetail pretty much covered most of my herb garden as a ground cover. I mean, it just spread. When people talk about mint spreading or lemon balm spreading or anything like that, it is a plant that has an incredible root system, and no matter what you do, you can't stop it because it has this runner. Some people say that one root is connected to the rest of all the horsetail. It's just like an incredible network. I even tried putting what do you call those things, a border, so it wouldn't go like edger, when you put it into the ground 6 or 8 inches down or a foot down, so the roots wouldn't go under, and anyways, it went under and it continued spreading. To make a incredible story, a positive story, is that there's a great value to horsetail. And back in, whenever this was, back in the 80s, early 90s, at the old Covenant Garden Market, there was a herb shop there called Harvest Fields. And the guy who owned it, his name was Theo, and I said, I got some horsetail interested. And he said, bring me as much as you can every week or every other week. So I'd bring him like a wheelbarrow or two of horsetail. And it sold. I mean, it is incredible benefit to it. So it's not really a failure, but in the sense of a success story of a plant that's a weed that just keeps on going. Actually, it still keeps spreading in my garden. But now what I've got is like a plant's taller than it. And when it's taller, it's not quite as invasive because the horsetail just grows because there's an opportunity.
Fantastic.
So anyways, that's a herb some people might not know, but it's a great one to know. If you get to recognize or identify it out in the wild, I really recommend harvesting it and using it as a tea. It has so many great benefits.
What I find fascinating about your gardening experience, Shantree, is you have your own nursery. You have amazing exotics like goji berry and the hardy kiwi and shapovas. You've got all your backyard gardens going. What is something you're experimenting with or something you want to try? Because I would imagine in 3 decades of doing this, you've tried a lot.
Well, I know this is a shorter show, so we had a couple hours I could go on and on about all the great stuff. But the one I've been really excited about, the one I'm experimenting with right now, and I feel like I've become... We have a greenhouse here. It's a passive solar greenhouse, and one of the things I've been growing for quite a number of years in that greenhouse is figs. And I've had very good success with the figs. And what I've been experimenting with now is growing them outdoors. And sometimes the ones outdoors can actually do better than the ones in the greenhouse. And people are always surprised. Well, when you talk about shipova or medlars or kiwis and some of these other plants that some people think of as exotic, figs are quite exotic and for a lot of people, and how delicious they are. And if you have them in the right spot outdoors, they do really, really well. And the one that's come into Ontario in the last few years now, I think less than 5 years, is the hardy Chicago fig. And all you have to do is just plant it outside in the fall, tarp it over, and mulch it really well, like the piles of bags of leaves over top of it, and it does very well. What I've been doing is just, because we're in the country, putting straw bales around the fig, and then putting a tarp or putting some glass over top of it. So it's like building a little tiny straw bale structure around it. And like I said, the ones not this past winter, this winter was so cold and long, they didn't do as well. But for the last 5 years before that, I would have like 20 to 50 figs on one plant. And they've been outside all winter. They weren't in a greenhouse. They didn't have to go indoors. They didn't have to put them in the basement or whatever. And it's an exciting plant to experiment with. And now that we've got the hardy Chicagos, they don't need as much protection as the other ones. And even though we had such a cold, long winter, I didn't lose any figs that were outdoors. I think I've got 10 of them now outdoors. And they all survived. I'll have to see if there's going to be any figs. Actually, there's one that definitely is going to have figs. They're already the size of my thumb. And here it is only, not even middle of July yet. And they're already producing these little figs that are coming along. So anyways, that's one. The term kiwis, there's many different kinds of kiwis that we can grow here. There's a lot of wonderful edible plants that, with the right protection, we can do it. One of the things that my partner Rob and I are doing, who started the nursery, is we're really experimenting with what kind of things would do really well with climate, with the climate changes that are happening, which plants can be very resilient to droughts or extreme cold or heat, and bringing those plants in and doing a lot of experimentation to find out what we can grow to in our climate, because the annuals are the ones that really they need a lot more aid on our end. If it didn't rain for 2 or 3 months, annuals would die. Our perennials wouldn't. The other one I'm very excited about is berries. Lots of different kinds of berries. I mean, in Canada, what is it, over 100? No, I think it's 200 different berries that grow in Canada. That's a lot of berries. I'm not saying they're all going to grow right here in Ontario, but of those 200, I'm sure 100 different berries could grow here. And the reason that berries are exciting is because they can take shade, they can take sun. Frost won't usually affect them. But the most exciting thing, more from a nutritionist perspective, is that berry leaves, most berry leaves, go as tea. So a lot of times we can say, okay, well, I can eat mulberries, I can eat raspberries, I can eat currants or gooseberries or blueberries, and now the new one that's coming out is the honeyberries or haskellats. So, but most of these berries have incredible nutrient-rich leaves that could be used as tea, and a lot of them are high in antioxidants, which is, we're talking about green tea being high in antioxidants. Well, here we have lots of different berries, leaves that are high in antioxidants, so it's a nutrient. So it's a great plant to grow. Usually there's very little insect damage. The main one is birds, obviously, but if they're in a nicely tucked corner in the shady spot under a tree, usually the birds don't get to them as quickly. And if not, just throw a netting or throw a tarp over top to keep the birds away while they're ripening.
I don't know if you can hear me smiling back here, but we have 3 haskellats at our back garden, and I got 7 berries. This is our second summer with them.
That's good.
And deep red, good antioxidants.
Mm-hmm.
And then 5 days ago, I look on the back deck and I go, what the heck is that? And my wife had picked up a fig tree 5 days ago.
What kind of tree?
A fig tree.
Uh-huh.
Very serendipitous advice. I had no idea that it would survive our winter. I'm very jealous that you actually get to eat them right out of the tree, like fresh fruit.
Well, it's taken years of experimentation. I mean, the greenhouse we built about 12 years ago. And the first year, I didn't even want to put them in the greenhouse because I thought it was going to be too cold. So I brought the figs into the basement, and then finally I put them into the greenhouse. And from the greenhouse, they're outside. And little by little, I've got braver and braver. And experiment with different kinds of figs. Yeah.
Our half hour is rapidly winding away. This is the point in the call when I do something called 5 quick questions. And this gives you a chance to share your wisdom and experience with our listeners. Are you ready to play?
Sure.
Okay. Question number 1. In your opinion, what's the number one reason why people don't have gardens?
One reason? Well, I'm going to give you 2 quick ones. One, I think people think it's too much work, and the other one is priority.
Very good.
I think my priority I put as number 1. People just don't give it as priority.
For those of you listening, make sure you check out Shantree's resource website at thelivingcenter.com. Center is R-E. I always feel gardening is something that's shared, so if you have friends getting into gardening, that's a good resource blog to start with. Shantree, number 2. You've been doing this now 30 years. What is the best gardening advice that you've ever received?
That's a really tough question. My mom has been my main teacher, so in the sense of advice, it's my mom. In the sense of one thing, I can't think of one thing. It's my lifestyle. I've been gardening since I was 4.5 years old. So basically, it's like language to me. I don't know life without gardening. It's a language to me. So I'm going to have to pass on that one. I just say my mom.
Very good.
Right.
For question number 3, if somebody's just getting into gardening, this is their first season, where does the absolute beginner start?
Number one thing to start with is just letting go of fear of something's going to die on me, and just take that leap of planting a seed or getting a plant and putting it in the ground, and really just care for it. Care for it as if it's a brand new being, like a baby, and really nourish it. In other words, be curious about it. Visit it on a regular basis, daily basis. See how it's doing. Be curious. I guess curiosity would be the number one thing.
Beautiful. Can you recommend a book that I should read on gardening this year?
Gardening with?
Yeah. So question number 4 is, what is the number one book that I, Dave Ledoux, should read about gardening this year?
Any book?
Yeah, I'm in my 3rd season. My wife is, 15 years ahead of me in gardening, so I'm what they call an ambitious amateur.
My number one book that I recommend to everybody, but the thing is, it's huge. It's 2-volume set, and it's well over 1,000 pages or 1,500 pages. It's like their textbooks. And he's my teacher, is Dave Jackie, and he wrote a book called Edible Forest Gardens. And it took him 8 years to write these books. It's the first time anyone's actually written anything like this in the world, so we're very lucky because it's for our climate. It's for the northern temperate climate of northeastern part of the continent. So it's really specific for our area. But anyways, that's a huge one. I put a forest gardening manual together, which is on our website. The one that I think a lot of people really like, and it's become quite a big seller, and it's easier to read compared to the Edible Forest Gardening books, because, like I said, it's for people who really want to get serious about forest gardening approach. So anyways, this other person, his name is Toby Hemingway, and his book is called Gaia's Garden, and most libraries have it. Easy to read, and it gives you a whole another angle about gardening. So anyways, I guess I listed 3 books there, but...
Very good. Yes, I'm a big reader, so thank you for that. Edible Forest Gardens, that's by Dave Jackie?
Jackie, and the last name is Jacke.
Okay, great. Question number 5. You're right on the cutting edge of trends and what's popular. Next year, what do you think is going to be something that everybody's going to be talking about or growing in their gardens?
In the sense of what people are going to be growing, I'm going to pass on answering that question, but in the sense of what I feel is really coming in like a trend, forest gardening is growing by leaps and bounds. 5, 6, 7 years ago, almost nobody even knew what that was here in Ontario. And 30 years ago was saying there's going to be 1 million forest gardens in southwestern Ontario, or Carolina, Canada, by the year 2017. It is growing so quickly, and that's only a few years away now. And because forest gardening is mimicking a forest. In other words, you do not need to fertilize. You don't need to water it. You don't need to... all the things that we... there's no weeding. There's no hoeing. There's no... Basically, it's bringing ecology into gardening. It's allowing... it's a big topic. But anyways, to me, that is what I feel is the trend. Be it small-scale gardeners or larger-scale gardeners or small farms of 5 acres. That is the thing that I know is going to come in, because when I moved on this land and I became an organic grower, there was about 10 or 12, maybe 15 organic farms in Ontario. Now we have over 700. And forest gardening is going to be, it is the way of the future. It's the only way we're going to be able to go forward in the sense of feeding ourselves as the decades go by.
You have a vision of 1 million forest gardens.
1 million forest gardens in Carolina, Canada by the year 2017.
To find out more about forest gardens, they could start on your website, correct?
On our website, I've got a whole... Yeah, as soon as you go into our homepage, on the very bottom, there's a button, and there's a category called Forest Gardening. If you go there, it gives you all the different things, from resources to courses to herb walks to all the different things that I'm involved with forest gardening. And last year, we actually started, not this spring, but last spring, we actually started a forest garden, a Carolina, Canada Forest Garden Guild, so that we're actually creating a directory. We're creating a network of people who are doing forest gardens, who are practitioners, who have nurseries, who are teachers, who are sharing this information with people. So that was just started. Actually, we just created the website this spring. And this is another website, so this isn't actually our website. It's called Carolina, Canada Forest Garden Guild, and people can Google that. And it's wonderful because that way you don't need a rototiller, you don't need tractors, you don't need fossil fuels, you don't need a lot of expenses. All you need is time to design a garden so that it's self-sustaining. Actually, what I'm going to do is read you what I call the 7 benefits of forest gardening, just for the listeners to really get this. And this is how you can actually know if how successful your garden is. If your garden can be self-perpetuating, self-fertilizing, self-watering, self-mulching, self-pollinating, self-healing, and self-regulating for pest and disease. So basically, to me, that's what forest gardening is, because if it does all those things, you know you're there. But if you're going out there and having to water, if you having to go out there and mulch or weed or do some of those things, then there's still a few more steps to get to accomplish that.
Fantastic.
That's why it's so exciting, because as time goes by, it's less and less work. It's just taking care of itself. So right now, my wife and I take care of the gardens by ourselves. We have 5 acres, but 2.5 acres we're taking care of ourselves. And it's a part-time thing, because we don't do this full-time, because we're primarily teachers. And so for 2 of us, taking care of 2.5 acres, I probably am out in the garden maybe two days, maybe maximum 3 days a week. She's out there maybe 1 day a week, half a day a week. And it's partly for me, it's because I love it. It's just enjoy being out there. And this is with no tractor, this is no rototiller, this is no machinery. 2.5 acres.
Incredible. Amazing.
So hopefully you and hopefully some of the listeners, if they want to come out and visit us and see the gardens and see we offer herb walks and garden tours on Thursday evenings, which is where I'm going to be going tonight.
Good. Well, dear listeners, I had promised you a treat today. We've had such a unique guest. We've talked about the trends in forest gardens, herbalism, and healing. Make sure you check out Shantree's website at www.thelivingcenter.com, and center spelled with an R-E. Shantree, you've been an amazing guest. I'm going to give you the last word. Can you leave our listeners with a note of encouragement or wisdom?
I'm going to read a quote, and it's a quote by the man who coined the term forest gardening. His name is Robert Hart from the UK. And it's a short little quote, and says, obviously, few of us are in a position to restore the forests, but tens of millions of us have gardens or access to open spaces, such as industrial wastelands where trees can be planted. And if full advantage can be taken, the potentialities that are available even in heavily built-up areas, new city forests can arise. So to me, that's my vision, that's my deep desire, is to have a more beautiful world by creating gardens where we're sustaining ourselves, we're getting fresh food. All of our needs are right there. We're all forest dwellers from our heritage. All our ancestors all came from the forest. And I think that's why people yearn to go back to that, to have where there's so much abundance, and it's pretty much free. So anyways, just leave you that with that quote from Robert Hart.
Shantree, your passion for teaching and healing is shone through on this call. I want to let you know how much we appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Have a great week.
Okay, take care. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Oh, hi, it's Dave. Wasn't that a great episode? All of the show notes will be available at BackToMyGarden.com/13.